Okay, think about this scenario for a moment. You've got these brilliant researchers, right?
Hmm.
They're working on AI, cutting-edge stuff, to spot a rare childhood cancer much, much earlier than we can now. Could be a lifesaver.
A really critical application, definitely.
But here's the problem. Because the cancer is rare, which is good, obviously getting enough data together in one place is, well, almost impossible.
Yeah, that's a classic challenge. Limited patient numbers.
So you think, okay, let's pool data, maybe from different hospitals,
Yep,
different countries even,
makes sense in theory.
but then you run into things like GDPR in Europe, the data privacy rules.
Right. And I pays in the US for health information.
Exactly. Super important rules, vital for protecting people, no question.
But they can also, unintentionally, create roadblocks for this kind of research that could really help people.
So the researchers hit this wall, a data wall.
It's a real paradox we see a lot in medicine now. Sometimes we have tons of data, but for very specific, vital things like this, we're actually data scarce.
Right. So here's where it gets interesting, almost sci-fi. What if? What if scientists could just create the patient data they need?
Created.
Yeah, realistic data. Not from actual people, but like virtual patients.
Ah, okay. I see where you're going.
Data that has all the right statistical vibes, ages, symptoms, genetics, maybe even image data, but it's completely artificial. No real person attached,
It certainly sounds futuristic when you put it like that, generating reality almost.
doesn't it? But it's happening.
It is. It's becoming a very real, very powerful tool.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to unpack complex stuff and make it understandable.
Sounds good.
And today, our mission is synthetic data in medicine. What even is it? How's it made? What can it actually do? And importantly, what are the tricky bits we need to watch out for?
Yeah, it's a really significant topic right now. Synthetic data isn't just a theory anymore, it's being used. It offers this potential path forward, balancing the need for lots of data with the absolute necessity of patient privacy.
It feels like a genuinely groundbreaking solution, potentially, moving from a niche idea
Mhm.
to something that could, save lives.
It really could reshape how we innovate in medicine responsibly.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. When we talk about synthetic data in healthcare, what are we actually talking about? Lay it out for us.
Okay, so fundamentally, synthetic data is information that's generated artificially. It doesn't come from watching real events or measuring things on actual patients.
Right, not directly observed.
Exactly. It's created by algorithms, by computer programs. Now, the key part, especially for medicine, is that good synthetic data is designed to mimic the important statistical properties of real data.
Statistical properties. Like what?
Like the patterns, the correlations, the distributions you see in real patient groups.
Hmm.
Think about, say, the average age someone gets diagnosed with condition X, or how often symptom Y and symptom Z appear together.
Okay, the underlying trends and relationships.
Precisely. Synthetic data captures those. But, and this is the crucial bit, there's no one-to-one link back to any real person. Zero connection to an individual.
So it's like that avatar idea you mentioned, or maybe a statistical echo of the real thing.
A statistical echo, I like that. Yeah, it reflects the group's characteristics, not any single person's details.
Got it. So why now? What's fueling this, surge in interest? Why are people suddenly so excited about making virtual patients?
Well, there are a few really big drivers. The first one is exactly what we started with, getting around those data access hurdles and privacy rules.
Hmm.
GDPR, APA, things like that.
Right, the regulations.
Researchers can use data that behaves like real patient data to train models, test hypotheses, without ever needing to access the actual sensitive, identifiable information. It's a way to work around a major bottleneck.
That makes a ton of sense. Solves a big problem. What else?
Another huge factor is tackling data scarcity. Sometimes you just don't have enough real-world data. Think about rare diseases.
Yeah, like the childhood cancer example.
Exactly. Or maybe specific subgroups within a population, perhaps underrepresented minorities, where historically we haven't collected enough data.
Mm.
Synthetic data generation techniques can sort of augment these small data sets. You can create larger virtual groups, virtual cohorts that still statistically reflect the rare condition or the specific group you care about, giving you more power for analysis.
So you can amplify a small signal, make it usable for research when the real data is just too thin on the ground.
You got it. And related to that is data sharing and collaboration. This is a big one.
How so?
Think about multiple hospitals wanting to pool their knowledge, maybe study treatment outcomes together, sharing actual patient records across institutions, especially across borders. It's legally and logistically really
I
complex.
can imagine the paperwork alone.
Right. But if each hospital generates a high quality synthetic version of its own data, that synthetic data can often be shared much more easily.
Because it's not real patient info anymore.
Exactly. So you can combine these synthetic data sets, do much larger analyses, get richer insights, all without compromising the privacy of the actual patients back at those hospitals. We're seeing this happen, for instance, with European hospitals collaborating on cancer research using shared synthetic data.
Wow. Okay, that opens up a lot of possibilities for teamwork.
It really does. And one more major driver: accelerating AI development.
Yes, the AI connection.
AI and machine learning models, especially the deep learning kind that are great for things like reading medical scans or predicting patient outcomes, they are hungry for data. They need vast amounts to learn properly.
Right, the more data, the better they get, generally.
Generally, yes. And synthetic data can provide an almost limitless supply of training material. Developers can train their AI, test it rigorously, iterate faster, without needing constant access to huge, sensitive, real-world data
So
sets.
it's like a safe, infinitely refillable sandbox for training medical AI.
That's a great way to think about it. An endless practice ground.
Okay, this is clearly powerful stuff, but how is it actually done? You mentioned algorithms, but can you give us a sense of the main techniques? Maybe with getting too deep in the weeds.
Sure, I can give you the high-level picture of a few common methods. One important approach is based on statistical modeling.
Okay.
Here, you start with a real data set. You analyze it really thoroughly to understand its statistical makeup, the distributions of different values, the correlations between variables, the patterns.
So you learn the rules of the real data.
Exactly. You build a statistical model that captures those rules. Then you use that model, that set of rules, to generate brand new, completely artificial data points that follow the same statistical patterns.
Okay. So it's like learning the recipe for chocolate cake by studying hundreds of real cakes and then using that master recipe to bake new, unique cakes that are still definitely chocolate cakes.
That's a fantastic analogy, yes. You capture the essence, the statistical recipe, and use it to create new instances.
Got it. What else is in the toolkit?
Another really fascinating technique uses something called generative adversarial networks, GANs for short.
JANs. Okay, heard of those. They involve two AIs, right?
That's right. They work in opposition, almost like a game. You have a generator AI. Its job is to create fake data, let's say, synthetic medical images, like x-rays.
Okay, the forger.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Then you have a discriminator AI. Its job is to look at an image, either a real one from the original dataset or a fake one from the generator, and decide, is this real or fake?
The art critic trying to spot the forgery.
Exactly. So the generator keeps trying to make fakes that are good enough to fool the discriminator. The discriminator keeps getting better at spotting the fakes.
They both learn from each other.
They do. It's this iterative process. The generator learns from the discriminator's feedback, getting better and better at mimicking the real data. Eventually, the generator gets so good that the discriminator can barely tell the difference anymore.
And at that point, the generator can crank out really realistic synthetic data.
That's the goal. High-fidelity synthetic data.
That's clever. A very competitive way to learn. Is there one more main type we should know about?
Yeah, another important one is variational autoencoders, or VAEs.
Yes.
These are also a type of neural network. Think of it in two parts. First, an encoder part learns to compress the real data down into a much smaller representation, like finding the essential code or key features that define the data.
So it learns the core essence.
Kind of, yeah.
Hmm.
Then, a decoder part learns how to take that compressed code and reconstruct data that looks like the original input.
Rebuild it from the essence.
Right. So once this whole VAE system is trained on real data, you can then feed the decoder new randomly generated codes that are similar in style to the ones it learned, and it will generate brand new synthetic data samples.
So it learns the underlying structure of, say, faces, and then you give it new face codes, and it draws new, believable faces it's never seen before.
That's a great analogy for how it works conceptually, yes.
Yeah.
Learning the underlying features and then generating novel examples based on those features.
Okay. Statistical models, GANs, VAEs. Sounds like some sophisticated tech.
It is. And these methods, plus others, are constantly evolving. Researchers are always working to make the synthetic data more accurate, more useful, and even better at protecting privacy.
Right, because the utility is key. This ability to create virtual patients. It's not just theoretical. Where is it actually making a difference today? What are some real-world applications?
Oh, it's starting to unlock quite a bit. One of the biggest areas, as we touched on, is definitely speeding up AI development and testing.
Right, the data-hungry AI.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Training AI for medical tasks like finding tumors in scans or spotting signs of diabetic retinopathy in eye images takes so much data. Getting enough diverse, labeled real data is slow and difficult.
Mhm.
So, researchers and companies are now using synthetic medical images generated using methods like JANS to train these AI models. They can generate thousands, even millions of synthetic examples.
And the AI learns from the fake data.
Yes, and learns effectively. Models trained partially or even fully on high-quality synthetic data are achieving really impressive accuracy on diagnostic tasks, often comparable to models trained only on real data. But they can be developed much faster.
So quicker development, faster testing.
Faster iteration, more robust testing because you can synthetically create edge cases or rare variations to test against. It helps get potentially life-saving AI tools developed and validated more quickly.
Then you could also use it to check for bias in the AI,
Yeah.
right? Test it on different synthetic populations.
That's a crucial point, yes. You can generate synthetic data sets representing diverse demographics to specifically test if an AI model performs fairly across different groups, helping to identify and mitigate bias before deployment.
That's hugely important. Okay, so accelerating AI is one big area. What's another?
Facilitating that collaborative research we talked about, making it easier for institutions to share insights without sharing raw patient data.
Right, the example of hospitals pooling synthetic data.
Exactly. This is enabling larger scale studies, especially for global health issues or rare diseases, where you need data from many places. Instead of navigating complex data sharing agreements for sensitive information, they share privacy preserving synthetic data sets.
So more collaboration, bigger studies.
Yes, leading to potentially more powerful findings. We're also seeing synthetic clinical trial data being used. Maybe not replacing the real trial data, but allowing researchers to explore the results more deeply, perhaps test secondary hypotheses, without needing access to the original confidential participant data.
Interesting. Okay, AI development, collaboration. Any other major uses?
Yes, medical education and training is another really promising application.
Teaching doctors and nurses. How?
Think about it. Medical trainees need exposure to a wide variety of cases, including rare conditions and complex scenarios, but you can't guarantee they'll see everything during their clinical rotations.
True. Some things are uncommon.
So people are developing synthetic patient records, even entire synthetic hospital databases using electronic health record, EHR formats. These provide incredibly realistic interactive training grounds.
Like a flight simulator, but for medicine.
Exactly like that. Trainees can practice diagnosing virtual patients, planning treatments, making clinical decisions in a completely safe environment. No risk to real patients.
They can make mistakes and learn from them safely.
Precisely. And they can be exposed to a much wider range of conditions and learn to navigate complex EHR systems much more effectively than just through textbooks or limited real-world encounters.
That sounds incredibly valuable for training.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. You mentioned drug discovery earlier.
Yes, advancing drug discovery and development. This is a huge area of interest for the pharmaceutical industry.
How can synthetic data help find new drugs?
It's less about finding the initial drug candidate, perhaps, and more about the development and trial process. You can generate synthetic patient populations that statistically mirror the kind of patients who would enroll in a clinical trial.
Virtual trial participants.
Kind of. You can use these synthetic populations to model potential drug responses, explore different dosing strategies, maybe even optimize the design of the actual clinical trial before you recruit a single real patient.
So running virtual experiments to refine the real ones.
Exactly. It can help predict how a drug might perform in broader, more diverse populations than you might initially test in. And it's particularly interesting for rare disease trials.
Why rare diseases specifically?
Because recruiting enough patients for a traditional trial, especially for the control or placebo group, can be incredibly difficult for rare conditions.
Right, not many patients available.
So there's potential to use highly realistic synthetic data to augment, or in some carefully considered cases, maybe even replace the control arm, making it more feasible to test much needed therapies for these conditions.
Wow, okay, the applications are broad and pretty profound. AI, collaboration, training, drug development.
It's really touching many aspects of medicine.
But it almost sounds too good to be true sometimes. Creating data from scratch. There must be challenges, right? Ethical considerations, things we need to be careful about.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing technology, but we absolutely have to navigate its use thoughtfully. There are significant ethical points and practical hurdles to consider.
Okay, let's talk about those. What's issue number one?
I'd say a primary concern is fidelity and representativeness. How well does the synthetic data actually capture the complexities of the real data?
Meaning, how accurate is the statistical echo?
Exactly. Does it replicate not just simple statistics, but the subtle correlations, the weird outliers, the really complex patterns that exist in real medical information, if the synthetic data isn't a faithful enough representation?
The models trained on it or conclusions drawn from it could be flawed.
Precisely. You might build an AI that works great on the synthetic data but fails in the real world, or you might draw incorrect research conclusions. So, developing better ways to measure how good the synthetic data is beyond just basic stats, looking at clinical relevance, is a really active area of research.
Okay, so ensuring the quality and accuracy is crucial. What's another major concern?
The risk of bias. This is a big one.
Bias. How does that creep into artificial data?
Well, remember, the algorithms learn from real world data. And unfortunately, real world medical data often contains existing biases.
Biases based on what?
Things like race, gender, socioeconomic status, historical inequities in access to care, these can all be reflected in the data we've collected. If the real data used to train the synthetic data generator is biased, the generator might just replicate those biases.
Or even make them worse?
Potentially, yes. It could amplify existing biases. So you could end up creating synthetic data and then AI tools trained on it that perform poorly for certain groups, actually worsening health disparities instead of helping.
That's a serious risk.
It is. That's why there's a critical focus now on developing fairness-aware synthetic data generation techniques methods specifically designed to identify and mitigate bias during the creation process. It's not simple, but it's essential.
Absolutely.
Right.
Quality, bias, what else?
We need clear guidelines and standards. Right now, it's still a bit like the Wild West.
Meaning.
There aren't really robust, widely agreed upon frameworks for how synthetic data should be created, validated, and used in different medical contexts. Who is responsible for ensuring its quality? How much validation is needed if you're using it to train a diagnostic AI versus, say, just for preliminary research exploration or education?
Yeah, different uses might need different levels of rigor.
Exactly. Regulatory bodies like the FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe are starting to look at this, provide some guidance, but there's definitely a need for more development of clear standards and best practices.
Okay, standards are needed. Anything else on the ethical front?
Public perception and building trust is important too.
How people feel about fake data being used in their healthcare.
Yeah. The terms synthetic or artificial might understandably raise concerns for some people. We need really clear communication about what this technology is, how it works, and crucially, how it actually protects privacy compared to using real data.
Transparency is key.
Absolutely. Transparency in how the data is generated, how it's validated, what its limitations are, that's vital for earning the trust of doctors, researchers, patients, and the public.
Makes sense. One last potential issue.
There's also a growing discussion around the security of the generative models themselves.
Security. You mean someone hacking the AI that makes the data?
Sort of. The concern is whether a sophisticated attacker, if they gain access to the trained generative model, like the JAN or VAE, could potentially reverse engineer things or infer sensitive information about the real data that was used to train it.
So even if the output data is anonymous, the tool used to make it might hold clues?
It's a potential risk, often called an inference attack or membership attack. It's an active area of research in AI security and privacy, how to build these powerful models in ways that are robust against such snooping.
Okay, so fidelity, bias, standards, trust, and model security. Plenty to think about to ensure this is used responsibly.
Definitely. The potential is huge, but we have to proceed with our eyes open to these challenges.
So looking past the challenges, painting that picture of the future again. Where do you see this heading? What's the next frontier for synthetic data in medicine?
I think the future is incredibly bright, honestly. We're likely moving towards a paradigm shift in how medical innovation happens, fueled in part by this technology.
A paradigm shift. What might that look like? What trends do you expect?
Well, for one, I think we'll see much more sophisticated hybrid approaches, using combinations of limited real data combined with abundant, high-quality synthetic data to train AI models that are even more powerful and adaptable than what we have now.
So the best of both worlds.
Kind of, yeah. Also, the ability to generate synthetic data on demand, tailored specifically for a particular research question, or to fill a known gap in an existing data set, I think that will become much more common and easier to do.
Like ordering up the exact data you need for your experiment.
A bit like that, yes.
Yeah.
Very targeted data generation. And a really exciting prospect is the democratization of access to medical insights.
Democratization. How so?
Right now, large, rich medical data sets are often locked away inside major hospitals or research institutions. If these institutions can generate and share high-fidelity synthetic versions of their data much more readily,
Then researchers anywhere could potentially work with that data, statistically speaking.
exactly, it could open up research opportunities to a much broader global community, smaller labs, researchers in lower resource settings, maybe even citizen scientists breaking down some of those traditional barriers to entry.
That could really level the playing field for medical discovery.
It could. And think about patient advocacy groups, especially for rare
What
diseases.
about them?
Imagine a group representing patients with a specific rare condition being able to commission the creation of a high-quality synthetic data set that truly reflects their community's experience.
They could use it to drive research focused on their specific needs.
Precisely. It could empower patient communities to become active drivers of research in a way that's been difficult before. It's potentially transformative.
That's a powerful image. Patient groups directing the creation of data for their own conditions.
And underpinning all this, the generative AI technologies themselves will just keep getting better. We'll see synthetic data become even more realistic, capturing more nuance, making it even more useful across the board.
It really does feel like we're just scratching the surface.
I think we are. It's been quite a journey exploring this today.
Yeah, definitely. So we've covered a lot what synthetic data is, these clever ways it's made using AI like JANs and VAEs and all these applications, boosting AI, helping scientists collaborate, training doctors, finding new medicines.
hmm And that core idea, creating these virtual patients that mirror reality statistically, but without compromising anyone's actual privacy, that's the fundamental leap.
It really is. It seems like such a powerful answer to that data logjam problem, letting us unlock insights from health data responsibly.
It does. But as we discussed, responsible development and use are absolutely key. We need to stay vigilant about the quality, about mitigating bias, about having clear ethical guidelines.
Couldn't agree more. The potential is immense, but so is the responsibility.
It's a testament to our ingenuity, finding ways to learn and improve health while upholding those crucial privacy principles.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway you want to leave people with?
I'd say if you're involved in healthcare, research, tech development, really start thinking about how synthetic data could play a role in your work. Could it help you overcome a data barrier? Could it accelerate your project?
Explore the potential.
Yes. And for policymakers, think about how to create an environment that supports this kind of responsible innovation. And for patients, for advocates, for all of us, really engage in the conversation, understand the potential benefits, but also help ensure the safeguards are strong.
Great advice. Well, thank you for guiding us through this fascinating topic.
My pleasure. It's important stuff to discuss.
And for you listening, maybe take a moment to think. How could the ability to safely generate realistic medical data change the future of health? It's definitely food for thought.